I love the theory of the Knicks getting an awesome free agent, but the practicality of it is so unrealistic because when you just look at the stars they've acquired, it's been through trade in Carmelo. I mean, they signed Amari Stoudemire and Julius Randle.
That's because we haven't been an attractive destination.
But you guys, you've been saying this for years, I feel like. You were an attractive destination when you got top 3 pick in RJ Barrett. You were an attractive destination with Carmelo Anthony.
Now's our chance.
But what makes this different? Because, look, Tom Thibodeau probably played a role in them getting Jalen Brunson. I thought the Brunson move was really good. I love him. But with that being said, there is a very strict limit with this group because Nick Nurse is a top 5 coach. Tom Thibodeau, we've seen what he is. He's not an above-average head coach. He's below average. He's
not below average.
Okay, let's go through the coaches in the NBA because he is well below average. It's honestly not even close. Let's do it. Steve Kerr or Tom Thibodeau?
Steve Kerr.
Tyronn Lue or Tom Thibodeau?
Tyronn Lue.
Monty Williams.
Monty Williams.
Rick Carlisle.
Tom Thibodeau. What is Rick Carlisle hasn't won a playoff series in like 10 years.
Has he won a championship?
When's the last time Rick Carlisle's won a playoff series? He hasn't even gotten out the first round.
Has Tom Thibodeau?
Out the first round? Yes, in the last 10 years he has.
Last year?
And in Chicago.
Yeah, what year is that?
Nate Robinson. His best player was Nate Robinson. He's out the first round.
I would say Nate Robinson.
Was this tall when he did that. Okay.
Yeah, you're the same height as Nate, probably.
Mike Budenholzer.
Mike Budenholzer.
Quinn Snyder.
Quinn Snyder.
Greg Popovich.
Greg Popovich.
Okay, Nick Nurse.
Nick Nurse.
Eric Spoelstra.
Spoelstra.
Michael Malone.
Mike Malone.
Ime Udoka.
Ime.
Frank Vogel.
Tom Thibodeau.
Billy Donovan.
That's close. I'm going to go with Tom Thibodeau.
Chris Finch.
Right. Chris Finch, I'm going to lean him.
Willie Green.
Tom Thibodeau.
We just saw Willie Green take a team that didn't have Zion Williamson to nearly they took him to the playoffs. They almost beat a number 1 seed in round 1. Yes, Devin Booker was hurt, but even still, Willie Green had an impressive first season. He's shown a lot of upside. I would much rather have Willie Green based off of what he can be. Players love that guy.
How many All-Stars do the Pelicans have?
2.
Right? How many do the Knicks have?
Well, according to you, they have an All-NBA player, which is greater than 2 All-Stars.
In the bubble, in the isolated season, yes. How come Willie Green?
Can we continue this list, by the way?
Oh, hold up. How come Willie Green gets put over Tom Thibodeau off of a play-in run where they made the playoffs, even though they were the 10th seed, right? I think they were the 10th seed heading in. But Tom Thibodeau doesn't get credit for taking a Knicks roster that should have never been in the playoffs in the first place to the 4th seed.
And you want to know what that did? That limited your ceiling. New York, the expectation in the basketball mecca, it shouldn't be first-round exits. What it should be is championships.
We weren't expected to make the playoffs that year.
But this Knicks team isn't championship
contender. To become a contender, you need to get top draft picks, and you need to push your cards to get game-changing talent.
What would Tom Thibodeau do with that Pelicans team? That Pelicans roster is really good.
It wasn't. They started year 3-16.
But right now, with the roster right now,
what Willie Green showed, he got Brandon Ingram to buy in as the leader, as one of the best defenders in that team. And then not only that, he got development from young players like Jackson Hayes, Jose Alvarado, Herb Jones, a little bit of Trey Murphy. Players love that guy.
Who's to say Herb Jones with Tom Thibodeau wouldn't have been phenomenal?
He would have probably done well.
I think he would have been pretty good, but how about...
Are we forgetting Jimmy? Did he not develop Jimmy Butler?
That was a decade ago. And then Jimmy Butler basically ran him out of Minnesota.
12 years ago was a decade. That was not a decade ago.
I said a decade ago, 10 years. 2012. And here's the thing. Jimmy Butler was also the one who turned him upside down in Minnesota. I mean, he brings in Jimmy Butler, and then Jimmy Butler flips his world literally upside down.
They were a top 5 seed before he got hurt in Minnesota.
They weren't. They were an 8 seed, and they got knocked down in the first round. So
by Houston, who made the conference finals and took the Warriors to 7.
Let's continue this list. Jason Kidd or Tom Thibodeau?
That's close. I'll lean Jason Kidd, though.
That's 15 coaches right there. Oof.
But
there's more. J.B. Bickerstaff.
Tom Thibodeau.
Mike Brown.
Tom Thibodeau.
All right.
Valid.
I would take, basically, for me, I have Tom Thibodeau.
You really like unproven guys who have upside. Oh, J.B. Bickerstaff. Look what he did with Cleveland. He's going to do so much better next year. I'm taking him.
Tom Thibodeau, this is his 3rd go-around.
Willie Green has one fucking run. Oh, he's better than Tom Thibodeau.
Tibbs has the history behind him. He's proven it before. Like, not the ceiling, sure, but these other guys who haven't done shit.
But
I understand why you're taking Tibbs over that.
Tom Thibodeau was bad last season. He's stubborn in his ways.
He's
not adaptive.
He's very
he
old
runs
school.
his players
He's
into the ground.
And
While he's old school, he doesn't actually have the franchise's best interest.
Also, how about what a better question would be, because Mike Malone, that's a good coach. You probably think he clears Tom Thibodeau. What happens if they switch places? If Thibodeau's in Denver and Mike Malone's in New York, are the Knicks making the playoffs?
I don't think Michael Malone clears Tom Thibodeau because Michael Malone was not very good last year in Denver. So, yeah, I think Malone's a little bit better. I would prefer him, yeah.
And just because there might be 14, 15 coaches that you prefer over Tom Thibodeau.
Well, you have 15 you prefer. You said top 15
does not mean that he's not a great head coach.
Great. You know what great means,
because
right?
Semantics.
Because
let's do it.
Honestly, being a great head coach is really a year-to-year thing.
Let's do a poll for TikTok or something. Is Tom Thibodeau a great head coach? Because I just named 15 head coaches I would much rather have.
I would think a coach of the year would be that.
And is Dwayne
multiple-time coach of the year?
Is Dwayne Casey a great head coach?
He was in Toronto. Absolutely.
He's a great head coach.
But then he got fired.
Yeah.
After winning coach of the year, nonetheless.
Yeah.
Wait, are the Pistons not trending up right now?
Yeah.
Who's gonna be the person?
They have top tier talent from high draft picks.
They do.
That's not.
What do you think Dwayne Casey's gonna do with that talent in Detroit?
I'm not trying to disrespect
I will
Dwayne
guarantee
Casey,
they'll be a playoff contender
guy.
sooner rather than later, with Dwayne Casey head coaching that team.
I just think they got Kate.
You know what I'm saying? Like they got the number one overall pick.
I think you're off.
Ultimately, you can be a great coach.
Saying Tom Thibodeau's a great head coach.
You can be a great. You can be a great coach, but you need the talent. Greg Popovich is the greatest coach of all fucking time in NBA. He hasn't done shit in the past couple of years. Why? Because the roster isn't there.
He was stubborn in his ways. He hasn't done nothing. He's stubborn in his ways.
Because he didn't want to work with Kawhi.
He didn't want to rebuild. What did the Knicks want to do? They didn't want to rebuild. They got a first round.
His first problem, he didn't want to work with Kawhi.
Yeah, does that dicey?
Wait, so
like if he was a player's coach and like let's make it work, you still have Kawhi. The Spurs team looks a lot different.
To be fair, Greg Popovich did kind of modernize load management for a guy like Kawhi too.
Despite Greg Popovich not doing nothing in the past couple of years within his team, he's still a great coach, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he's the greatest coach
because he has championships. I understand that. You need the roster too. Tom Thibodeau, New York, he's at 2 seasons. The first season, we overachieved. The second season, we came back down to earth. Now this is a make or break year.
The reason why Greg Popovich, what I'm trying to say is, the reason why he hasn't done nothing with talent.
He made the playoffs with the Bulls with DJ Augustine starting.
He's not letting me speak. The reason why Greg Popovich has done nothing is because he didn't do what was best for the organization. That was to rebuild 3 years ago and go out and get a top-end pick in the draft multiple years in a row instead of settling for a Josh Primo who's not a great prospect. And now they're realizing, oh, wait, we're a couple years late to this thing. Now we've delayed an inevitable rebuild. The Knicks are delaying an inevitable rebuild. If you want RJ to fully grow, he has to take the keys as a main guy. I like the Jalen Brunson move. I think he fits well. But with Tom Thibodeau, there isn't much upside. And beyond that, he's stubborn. He's not going to help you do what's best for the organization, which was missing the playoffs in 2020. So you can get a Cade Cunningham who makes you a contender, like you just said, with Dwayne Casey. And then, along for RJ Barrett, you don't sign Jalen Brunson with Cade Cunningham. But if you have a backcourt of Cade and RJ, according to you're set for contention, like you just said.
Nick Nurse, I didn't say contention. I said playoff lock.
You said that the Pistons are trending toward contention with Dwayne Casey because of Cade
No,
Cunningham.
I didn't. I said playoff contenders.
Playoff contenders, yeah.
Yeah, so they're making the playoffs. They're gonna be contending to make the playoffs.
Play-ins, yeah.
A contender for the playoffs, a team that could make the playoffs. A playoff contender is a team that can win a championship.
Okay, yeah.
I know what I meant.
You know what I meant. We know the Pistons aren't
ultimately.
Well, he's over here telling me Tom Thibodeau is a great head coach. I don't know what he's trying to get at.
We lost the semantics. He's a good head coach.
He's not really good. I think head coaches are as good as they have ever been, and there's 20 of them I wouldn't mind having.
So does that mean that Tom Thibodeau's not great, or does that mean that the coaches are just in abundance right now that are great?
He's not great. He did, he was running guys into the ground in Chicago.
So what do you make about the year they had the number 4 seed? What's the reason?
Because he went all in on pushing the chips of a team that was fine in a year where they suffered no injuries, no COVID protocol. Julius played all 72 games, and let's be honest, he had a career year. It wasn't really replicable.
So trading for Derrick Rose, which was his decision, had nothing to do with it, which was his
call.
call.
A big pickup.
His call.
Now, what are you doing with Derrick Rose because you're trying to develop Emmanuel quickly?
Well,
how does that work?
Weird. It's a weird fit.
Well, it's going to work.
Yeah.
I know it's going to work.
It's going to work.
Now
if you trade quickly.
Because now Emmanuel quickly is going to be off to Utah when we get Donovan Mitchell. Now, let me ask you, does Tom Thibodeau make the playoffs with a roster of Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent, OG Anunoby, and Pascal Siakam?
He would run them in the ground just like Nick Nurse is. That's a good question.
Oh, so when Thibodeau does it, it's a bad thing, but Nick Nurse running them to the ground, it's fine.
But out of necessity. So I'm thinking to myself, that's Nick Nurse's only fault as the head coach. What I'm saying here is
his only fault?
Nick Nurse is amazing at developing talent. I looked at Precious Achiuwa last year. He developed a little bit of Chris Boucher, though he wouldn't necessarily play him. And then Gary Trent. Fred VanVleet. I don't think Tibbs is developing
Gary Trent was good in Portland.
But he didn't fully take off.
Because he wasn't in Portland for long. He was there for his rookie season and got traded.
And then he took another step up.
He was gonna take off in Portland regardless, though.
And they took another step up in a better fit in Toronto.
So we're saying Nick Nurse developed Gary Trent. He
developed Precious Achiuwa into like a guy that's knocking down transition 3-pointers like he's Kevin Durant. I'm like, is this dude a sharpshooter? And then I look at Fred VanVleet, Scotty Barnes, like you said. All of those guys are developing, and I look at RJ. He's really just developing because they're saying.
What about IQ? Has he developed or no?
No, he stepped back. He regressed in year 2. He wasn't making shots. That's really
What about Quentin Grimes' his rookie year? He was pretty good.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
No credit to Tom
Thibodeau. Tibbs wouldn't play him. Tibbs did not play him until like he had to out of necessity because of COVID. You realize
that's his fault as coach.
Yeah, but it was really just everyone's hurt to skim the keys, and he shot.
Julius Randle was healthy.
He averaged 24 a game shooting.
What
40.
do you mean?
He barely shot 40%. Yeah, he was impressive.
RJ's developed. We've seen over the year, from year 1 RJ to what we saw last season.
But I wouldn't credit that to Tibbs. I would credit that to opportunity and a very good talent.
Oh, wow. So with Nurse,
you can't pick and choose.
I do pick and choose.
You can't do that, bro. We know RJ's been developing.
I look at Toronto's
wait, hold on,
bro.
Wait, Joe, before you go. So is Tom Thibodeau the reason RJ misses layups at the basket? It's his fault?
No.
Okay. So
he's also a player that was running RJ Barron to the ground in the second season as well at the same time.
What do you mean running him to the ground?
And he was just relegating him to a corner 3-point shooter role. If you had the best interest of RJ Barron in mind, he wouldn't be a corner shooter in his second season. He would have a lead role on the offense, so he can get some of those growing pains out early. You're not going to be very good with the second year RJ Barrett, and that's okay.
Well,
you're supposed to be a rebuilding team because you just had the 3rd overall pick the year before.
To his defense, they were winning.
Bro.
Yeah, but they didn't go.
This is so fucking funny.
What they weren't going around.
So listen, Joe. Let me ask you this.
But for the Knicks, a 4 seed is a huge win.
If this is the basketball mecca, are we settling for a first-round exit?
I don't disagree,
title?
but the Knicks have been one of the most inconsistent teams in the league.
Bro. You're talking about a title when we went into that season not even thinking we were going to make the playoffs.
Yeah. But how do you get to a title, Joel?
Making the playoffs.
You don't go from no playoffs to
But here's what I'm asking. How do you make the playoffs? What are the steps? What do you have to do? What are the steps?
This is funny.
Blocks?
Joe, because he said something that was really fucking dumb that I want to now reiterate to you because I want to give you these scenarios. Right. You criticized Tom Thibodeau for relegating RJ to a spot-up shooter role, right? And that wasn't properly developing, although the team was winning. So would a great coach make the team lose in favor of developing your 3rd overall pick or keep doing what's making the team win and the 3rd overall pick now relegated to a role that's helping the team win games?
You got to win. I know long term it's probably not in the best interest of RJ, but for that specific season, when the Knicks have been the laughingstock of the league, for them to get to a 4 seed is a huge win for them.
So here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at the top contenders from each conference.
Why?
Because you like the Miami Heat, they were the one team that didn't have a bunch of lottery picks to build a contender. The Boston Celtics, what do? They bottom out, got Marcus Smart, and then they trade veterans who are not going to take them anything past the first round. And guess what that became? Jaylen Brown, and then a pick that would become Jason Tatum, a top 10 player.
You're asking Tom Thibodeau to be the GM. He's not the GM of this team.
But the direction that you go in hiring Tom Thibodeau, who's an older coach that wants to win now, is we're going with Tom Thibodeau. This is his squad. We're going to design it for him.
When we hired Tom Thibodeau, Leon Rose was the one that made the hire. Leon Rose's vision in New York was to do exactly what we're doing now in trying to get a star like Donovan Mitchell. Why do you think we're in the sweepstakes?
They acquired the pieces, and they have the picks to go out and get a superstar. You have to give them that. Because you can build through the draft, but you could also go and get that superstar player via trade. That's what the Celtics did when they got KG.
You're a basketball historian.
But they already had.
They had Pierce, and they traded for Wright. Like it happened the same way.
John,
global franchise to move Kevin Garnett for not much.
John.
But the Knicks are a global franchise too.
Yeah, they are the global franchise. They're not the ones screwing over the global franchise.
John, you're a basketball historian. Where were the Knicks in 2017? What did we have? Did we have any assets?
Have shit. 2017.
You had Kristaps Porzingis.
Facts.
Did we have any assets though outside of him?
Dennis Smith Jr.
Right.
Tim Hardaway Jr. Was he on the team or was he in Atlanta?
I think he might have been in Atlanta.
He was probably in Atlanta. Let me pull it up.
So we've went from having no assets, no cap money, to now having salary, having 8 first-round picks
That's pretty
that
solid.
are tradable.
And most of those
and
lottery
most
protected.
young players. What players that we've drafted late include Emmanuel Quickly, who's a very good player, Quentin Grimes, who was late first round. We've done a good job drafting too.
Yeah, so
Jericho Sims is a good backup.
So now imagine.
So how is this? What are we talking
impressive.
about here?
So now imagine if you give yourself a bigger bite at the apple.
By doing what?
By getting a top 3 pick. That's how Memphis got John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr.
So
Warriors
forcing
the
us
Warriors
to tank.
by being bad for a long time.
So you want us to tank?
Yes, that's what the Knicks should
Your
have done all
roster's
along.
too good now to tank. We're way past
what
this.
I'm saying is, you understand this.
So you want Tom Thibodeau to tank?
There's
And
2 different
hiring
arguments
Tom
here,
Thibodeau,
though.
So in hiring Tom Thibodeau as a coach, your direction becomes win
now.
But when you're supposed to,
I know what he's doing. I know what he's doing. He wants Tom Thibodeau to tank to then be like, oh look, Tom Thibodeau, he's such an ass coach. He won 20 fucking games.
no, what I'm saying is you don't hire Tom Thibodeau. You hire a younger coach who he can grow. You look at what a team like Memphis did.
But that's a different argument. You should have never hired Tom Thibodeau. Now he is the coach.
Yes.
This is the team.
But
What
hold
is he?
up.
But the limitations with him is his style. What type of coach is this guy? Is he a player development? Is you win now? Is he even like, I look at Rick Carlisle. Rick Carlisle is a brilliant playoff coach, one of the best in the NBA. Tyronn Lue is a brilliant
He's a brilliant playoff coach that hasn't gotten out the first round in how many years?
Well, to be fair, in those 2 years, he went up against the Clippers, and they had 2 top 10 players.
If it's not for
And
Dirk
they
going
went deep in those
and
series.
if it's not
6, 7
they took-
games.
and here's
if
the
it's not
thing,
for
they went
Dirk
to
going on a
Game 7
historically
both
great
of
run,
those.
Rick Carlisle does not have a championship title. Dirk Nowitzki fucking backpacked his fraud ass.
I love Dirk.
What are we talking about?
It was a great finals
He called
run.
a top 5 coach fraud.